wonderful key costumer and former leader of Motion Picture Costumers 705, Nicholas Brown. He is very well known for his work on such beloved pieces and well-known film and TV of Free Guy, Red Notice, Scrubs, Grace and Frankie, Glee and Scandal, and many, many more. Please welcome Nicholas Brown.
Good morning, Beth. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for coming. So first of all, I want to ask you, most people probably don't know what a key costumer does. So could you let us know what a key costumer does and what a general day would look like for you?
So I'm sure that when you work in a custom-made department, you switch hats a lot, depending on what needs to be accomplished. And so depending on who the supervisor and the designer are, they will set up a department in the way that they're comfortable with. So a key costumer can be many things. So typically what a key costumer is they are the right hand to the costume supervisor, who is the person who's in charge of the budget and really overseeing the big picture. And what they are usually tasked with doing is the background. And the background, if people don't know who are watching, they are the actors who populate a scene behind the principal actors. And so this can be a huge undertaking, depending on if it's period, if it's, supposed to be a beach scene that you're shooting in January, or if it's, there can be so many challenges, and just by sheer numbers, like I did a feature where the first day we had 750 background filling a church. So it can be a huge job. Usually that's what they do. And they come in, they discuss with they'll read the episode or the movie, and they will start working, usually, depending on what it takes. So like if something has to be built for the background, they'll probably get that started earlier, sooner rather than later, but usually they work kind of in order. So, if you have like a court scene, they'll like pull suiting and for that scene. And if they do, and sometimes it's shopping, sometimes it's pulling at costume houses. It depends on what the budget is. The show that I'm working on right now, the Mysterious Benedict Society, it is like a mini Wes Anderson film, which is it's just stylized. There isn't a time period. It is kind of its own world. So Bethany Jane Boatilla, who is our key costumer, is working with Rick Spencer, and they are doing, it's a mishmash of different periods. And it is, based on color palette is a huge consideration, and, and just the physical numbers. And they're going to do pre-fits, which means they get the background actors to come in early so that they can fit them, so that on the day, they aren't trying to get alterations done and all the things that you need to do when you have a lot of background.
So what got you into costumes in the first place?
So I have always been obsessed with clothing. Like I am a child of the 80s, and the 80s was all about excess and fashion and, crazy, no holds bar looks, that really went to the very edge. Like at the height of the 80s, it was insane in a great way. And, I grew up in a small town in North San Diego, and I lived vicariously through shows like Dynasty and Dallas, shows that were very fashion forward and opulent, and gave me a window into a world that I had never been privy to. And so I didn't connect the dots then. I was like, I'm going to be a fashion designer. So I went to New York, and I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology, and pretty much a quarter in, I was like, this is, the first semester, we had 8 blocks of 24 people, and the second semester, there were 4. They literally cut the class in half in one semester. The fashion industry is brutal. It is not for the faint of heart, and I knew pretty much that I didn't want to do fashion, but I love being in New York, and I love the opportunities that that afforded me. And and also I'd never really experienced theater because I grew up in a rural part of San Diego, and they had $13 tickets for Les Mis, and it was literally the last row in the mezzanine, like you could rest your head against the wall. And I remember sitting in that theater and going, who makes the clothes? Somebody has to make the clothes. And I had, I was so young. And to me, that was just, it just made my brain explode, and like all the emotions that I felt, and how theatrical it was, and all the components together, the lighting, the sound, the scenic design. And really, that was kind of the moment where I was like, that's my passion. That's the direction I'm going to go. And so I applied to different schools, and I ended up going to CalArts in California Institute of the Arts in North Los Angeles, and I finished my degree there in costume design.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about your latest project?
Yeah, absolutely. It is something I'm incredibly proud of. I've worked on so many shows in my career where it's clothing that is great. It tells the story. It is functional, but not really necessarily challenging. And the Mysterious Benedict Society is this crazy world that has been created that doesn't really exist anywhere. And it is an amalgam of different periods and interest and textures. And it is a challenge every day to go out and find clothing in stores that will help to sell this world. It's based on a series of books, and it is Tony Hale, who was in Arrested Development, and if you just saw Being the Ricardos, he's in that as well. And he plays two characters. He plays twin brothers, and they are really could not be more diametrically opposed. One has long curly hair, one has really like slick hair, one has, wears, I would say, so I'm coming in on the second season. The first season was designed by Kate Adair, who is an incredible costume designer who has done The Man in the High Castle, Desperate Housewives. She has a really incredible career, and she did such amazing work the first season in helping to create this world. So it's now Chrissy Carvanides is the designer for the second season. So it is building on what Kate created, and and seeing what it is that we can do with costumes to take it further. And it's just incredible, because it is looking in places that you just normally wouldn't look for costumes, like it is just, and everywhere, like it's stores, it's online, it's costume houses. It is really this intricate combination of different pieces that will help create these characters, but also just the look of the show is so interesting and different, and not a procedural, and not a lot of characters who are just created to move the action along. They're living, breathing, they have a purpose to be in this world.
How did you make your transition from college into your career?
So I initially started doing theater. That was like, and in Los Angeles, theater isn't really a big thing. So I did some equity waiver shows, and then one day, like how it always happens, you get this call that drops from the sky that changes your life. And somebody that I'd gone to school with at CalArts had turned down a show and recommended me for it. And it was a feature, an independent feature, because when I started in the 90s, independent features were so prevalent. And I was hired as the assistant costume designer, and the designer of the show hadn't told the producers that she was also doing another show concurrently. And when they found out, they fired her and I got bumped up. It was a baptism by fire. So I was doing it like a play. Like I made a cross plot and, I was building things for characters. Melinda Dillon's in it, who I don't know if you remember from A Christmas Story. And she was incredible to work with. And Robert Carradine was in it. And it was called The Effects of Magic. It was like a fun little silly kids movie, but it was definitely me having to learn really quickly about deadlines and how to accomplish things in a timely fashion and how to keep things on budget. And so I did. And then I did a few more features, designed them, and I recognized that I'm a Cancer and I get a little too connected to the creative ideas. And in this business, they are quickly torn down and replaced. And I just recognized in myself that if I did that for my entire career, it would be detrimental to my emotional state of being. So I got into 705 doing, I worked at a costume house, motion picture costume company. I got my 30 days there. And then it was really slow when I got my 30 days, so I didn't have to stay for the entire year. And then I started really quickly working on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, doing background. And then I ended up being there for 3 seasons and ended up being the trailer key and did a lot of set. And then I did supervising for a long time, for 6 or so years. And then I recognized, in the same way that that I shouldn't be a costume designer, that I shouldn't be a supervisor, because every problem in the department is technically your problem, and that is a lot to shoulder. And some people do it so effortlessly.
What do you think is the most detailed thing you've ever worked on?
Detailed. And when you say detailed, do you mean like
complex, or mostly I'm just fishing for stories?
Right, exactly. I mean, I can tell you so many stories that are like on this. So like when I was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the designer would hand over the clothes to the set costumer and I would go in, when they were doing a setup, and they would kind of go through, and if there was anything special, they would tell us, we want the jacket on here, not here, any notes like that. And one time I went in and there was a huge action sequence with Sarah, who played Buffy. And she had these knee-high python boots, high heel, chunky heel boots. And they had the second change. She had 2 stunt doubles. So they had 2 changes for the stunts. And I'm like, where are the boots? And the designer goes, oh, we can't afford those. And it's like, so, and then like I was at a place in my career where I'm like, well, I'll just roll with it. And so somebody in the art department showed me how to put pantyhose over the boot and then spray it with the darkest color and then let that dry and then move the pantyhose and then spray it with the middle color and then move the pantyhose. And I have to say, it looked amazing for being like a stunt double. It looked great. Like, I don't think anybody noticed the difference. Like those, like that's one instance. Another, like on Red Notice, there was a bit where Ryan Reynolds has to take off a jacket that he's wearing, pull it inside out, and it's technically reversible. So it was, then the stunts worked it into the stunt choreography. And so he never really got the jacket back on, but you had to see that he was flipping it out. And so that was 3 different jackets. Because we tried it with a real reversible one and it didn't look good. like once he reversed.
Yeah.
So it is, a lot of it is trial and error. It's like research and development. It is, working with all the different collaborators to come up with the best solution. And sometimes that can happen quickly, and sometimes it can be, a multi-step process. That was a multi-step process.
Speaking of multi-step things, what do you think took the most steps or prototypes to get to your final product?
Well, there are different things that took, like a meandering route to their finished product, depending on different things. And like I said, it's a collaborative process. So sometimes like on Red Notice, I can like think of, that's fresh in my mind because I just did it recently, is, there was one costume that was Ryan Reynolds was supposed to wear, and the designer originally thought he was, don't want to do any spoilers, but he was at a party undercover, and so he's supposed to look like one of the servers. And so it's at this, glamorous mansion in Spain, and so she had this idea of doing the servers as like 18th century, with powdered wigs, and so that went through several incarnations, a few fittings, and then, ultimately it was too much of a joke. It ended up being, it was just, and so he ended up wearing a white dinner jacket. So, which just couldn't have been more different than the initial concept. So, I mean, that is, everybody has to decide what is best for the show. And, as long as he wasn't in, and it was actually kind of brilliant in the same way that, doing a 19th century costume was, in that you could spot him in the middle of a crowd because everybody else was in dark colors. So having him in a white jacket, it was like, you could spot him immediately. So it was great. I think it ended up being awesome.
What was the most glamorous thing you've worked on?
The most glamorous. Well, it depends on what you call glamour, but I had the great opportunity to work with Meredith Markworth Pollock, who designed the first 3 seasons of Dynasty, and I did the pilot with her, and it was really a full circle moment. And anybody who knows me well probably knows how much Dynasty influenced my life and my career. And, when she interviewed me, she's like, the second interview I had canceled. And honestly, everybody that I asked who I should talk to for this position said your name. Because that is, and working with Meredith, who's an incredibly talented designer, it was really, really fun to put together a world of the 1% of the 1%, and the producers took me to task one day at lunch. They're like, "Oh, we were just talking about your department." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yes." He's like, "We just can't believe that you spent $1,600 on a pair of shoes." And I go, "Well, then maybe what the show you should be doing is Roseanne, because that scene started on her shoe." Like that, literally, like the opening shot of the Dynasty pilot is of her shoes. So if you can't sell in that opening shot that that she is one of the richest people in the world, then you haven't done your job. And the shoes that Meredith found were spectacular. They were incredible. They were worth every penny. They, said everything they needed to say. They did the shot before she literally walked in the shoes, so the bottoms were they were Louboutins, and they were bright red, and it was incredible.
Speaking of passing things for something that they're not, what's a costume that is not what it looks like?
What is a costume that's not? So sometimes you will. So here's the perfect example. So when you do a show, sometimes the clothing has to look like it's perfect. Like the character takes very good care of their clothing, or maybe only wears it once or twice before they give it to the Goodwill. And sometimes characters are supposed to look really lived in. But if you do a character that looks really lived in and and they have, let's say they have a stunt person or you need multiples of that costume, then you are going to have to either buy new clothes and have an ager dyer distress them so that they look lived in, or you can buy, sometimes to circumvent that, you can buy clothing that has been distressed or aged or stonewashed or whatever it is that they do, so that so that it already looks lived in. And so theoretically, sometimes like a denim jacket is supposed to look like, like a $50 denim jacket, but you pay $300 for that denim jacket because it has little rips in it. And like, there's a lot of attention to detail that makes it look aged and lived in. And so that can be, to me, that's a costume that doesn't look like it's $300, as my parents would say, but it is because it already has this great lived-in quality about it, which will give so much depth to a character, as opposed to, there's nothing worse than watching a show and you just can't get past, like seeing the folds in a shirt, or that's just been opened, or something that looks brand new. It just doesn't it kind of takes you out of the reality of the world, kind of like a bad wig, like it just, you can't really get past it. Like it prevents me from suspending my disbelief and just like going with the story if things like that happen that feel disingenuous.
How about a costume that was simple but had a great impact?
Oh,
Biggest bang for the buck, for the not literally, but
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I just listened to this podcast about the 2000s, Vogue in the 2000s, and with the advent of grunge, it became, and this kind of like harkens back to the last question, all of the models and it girls started mixing vintage pieces with high fashion, or like fast fashion with high fashion. So it was never this like all one thing. And I think that we do that a lot too in costuming. It's like sometimes you can get the look that you want with a piece that's not incredibly expensive, and sometimes you need to spend the money to get that look, which will in turn elevate other pieces, take them to a place where otherwise alone they wouldn't have been. And so it is, and that also gives like a really great depth to when you combine disparate pieces for a look. It always, when there's that dramatic tension between two pieces, I think it's really great.
What are some of your favorite tools to work with?
Favorite tools to work with. So this is going to sound crazy, but my favorite tool that I work with are my shoes. And the reason is that I spend my entire day walking. I am, last week preparing for Tony Hale's fitting, I did over 25,000 steps, which is about 10 miles in one day. And that's just literally in Beverly Hills. So that's like up and down Rodeo and doing Saks and Neiman's. And then also I jumped over to Century City to do Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom as well. So having good shoes and I have really high arches. So for me, that's a really good investment. And I've learned that, I can't wear pretty shoes anymore. They have to be more functional. I mean, my favorite right now are APL's, Athletic Propulsion Labs, and they have some really great animal prints and fun things that I don't feel like I'm compromising that much, but it is really important for me to have happy feet. So that's my first most important tool. My second most important tool, I would say, is my notebook, which has it's like my little Bible. It has all my notes. It is my brain. It is writing things down so that I don't forget to get them done. It's usually little details like we need tights for this person, we need earrings for this person. It's like bits. Or like at the beginning of a pull, like, they have 4 changes, and these are what the 4 changes are, and this is what we need to accomplish in the fitting. And sometimes they want to build a closet if you're doing like mini episodes, or if it's a movie where you just need, if the actor that day is like, oh, I don't know if this feels authentic. And so you have to have something in their closet that you can pull out and say, well, what if we take this and this and this and this to get them to the place where they're ready to have that comfort level where they feel like they're being authentic to their character. So that's, and in my notebook, I also have like all the actors' sizes. I have a calendar with the fittings. I have all of the phone numbers that I would need to use. And that's all in the front of my notebook. So my notebook is my second one. And then I guess the last most important thing is my computer. Because now with COVID, it is, when I first started, Neiman Marcus had an entire, it was like 10 tables with men's ties on. And now it is 2 tables. And it is like the amount of merchandise in the stores has so dramatically declined. Now, I don't know if that is going to change once they unload all those container ships off the coast of Long Beach. Let's hope so. Let's hope that it gets like a little further closer to where it was. But right now it's really difficult to do a character out of just the stores. That's a challenge. So having my computer and being able to order things online, getting interesting pieces. I mean, on Mysterious Benedict Society, I spent a great time at the beginning of the show, orchestrating all the school uniforms, which are coming from England, and they were in customs on Friday. Let's hope they get there. Let's hope they're there on Tuesday. Fingers crossed. But like, it is so important in all of the emails and keeping in touch with vendors. And so my computer is and then of course the mini computer in your hand. That is the other greatest tool. I'm not like you, you're probably going to say you're elsewhere, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, we just have like completely different, what you do is literally tool based.
Mm-hmm.
You can't drape a costume if you don't have a dress form. But for me, it's, it's like this, and then the tools to help me get everything done. Sometimes, you'll find something that's perfect, but they don't have the size in the store. So you're like, can we order it to get it in time?
Do you want to talk a little bit about working with studio services?
Yeah, absolutely. So studio services is an incredible tool because when you're shopping, if you are shopping with a credit card, then you can, so let's say the fitting is like a rack of clothing. That rack of clothing can cost X amount of dollars, but really you're only going to keep 10 to 15% of that rack. So what Studio Services lets you do, and they have it at Bloomingdale's and Macy's and Neiman's and Saks Men's and Nordstrom. And what you do is you go in and you can pull the clothing and do the fitting. And then when you do the return, they bill you for what you keep, as opposed to billing you for the entire pull and then returning the majority of that pull. So it makes it better for them because they don't have these like huge fluctuations in their, in the store's numbers. And it also just makes it really incredibly helpful, and also like, so they choose this outfit. Well, I need 6 of those. Can you help me find 6 more of this? And they will do that, bring it in. And so it's an incredible tool for all the costumers to be able to have this, to go in and do a pull at a moment's notice and be ready for a fitting and not have to go through all of the hoops of purchasing it, returning it, doing the actual return with a credit card. It's a great tool.
What was the hardest thing for you to learn how to do for your job?
Well, so here's the thing. When you're a shopper, this is the hardest thing I kind of knew that I was comfortable in what I was doing when you know when you have it. So you're out shopping and you're getting different pieces from different stores. So sometimes it can be disparate in your head. Like, do I have, like, how many outfits do I have? Because sometimes you're not pulling out entire outfits at a store, you're pulling pieces. So it is, when the designer tells me what they want, I will go and pull what they ask for. I will pull what I like, and that's injecting my eye into the mix. And then I'll pull wild cards, and those are things that are just so crazy they might work. And when I was on Red Notice, we had pulled for Chris Diamantopoulos, who was on Silicon Valley, and he was the villain and very, very, very rich, and he sotto voce, and I pulled this insane suit from Dolce & Gabbana, which was black and gold, this incredible jacquard fabric, and it was, ancient Roman inspired, like motif. And it was, and when the designer Mary Vogt saw it, she was like, I don't know about that. That may be going a little too far. But in the fitting, in collaborating with Chris, that's where he was taking the character. The character was going that far. So in having that collaboration with Chris and figuring out how big his character really was going to be, it made sense in that context.
So speaking of cool jacquard and so forth, do you have any favorite materials or brands that are your favorite?
Oh, I mean, there's so many. It's like my Crayola box is so huge. Like and it just is so character specific. So, so for Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder, like Giorgio Armani was like our go-to. Like I think that Viola and Carrie both, their suiting is just so elegant, and it really straddles the line between being masculine and feminine, because sometimes suiting can be very masculine, which works on some. And then, like, the great thing about Giorgio Armani is it's still very feminine. There's still a very, because it's crepes and fabrics that it's not a lot of interfacing, it's not a lot of, structure, and it feels very loose and fluid and sexy. Like that would be for that. And then for, for Mysterious Benedict Society, it's like pulling from everywhere. I mean, one of my favorite websites right now is Wolf and Badger, which is kind of like Farfetch. They bring together all of these vendors all over the country, or all over the world, I should say, and they, their things are on the website, and you order it, and it comes directly from the vendor. It's not like from the Wolf and Badger website or warehouse. That they have incredible pieces that you just don't find in the States, and really interesting, like, designers that you don't necessarily hear of. And there are like things, for Grace and Frankie, we used a lot of Etro. Etro is an incredible, Italian family, and everything's prints. Beautiful, beautiful, insane mixing of prints. So if you're not afraid to do that, then Etro is a great brand for you. And it's very specific, but it worked for like a couple of the male characters on that show. It just really depends on the show. And it's like, I don't know if I have favorites, as opposed to, they're just like, I have go-to things in my toolbox, which I know are going to help tell the story the best.
What industry secret would you wish you had known when you first started out?
We have dry cleaners who will clean clothes overnight, which most people don't have access to, where you like have clothes and you send them out at the end of the shooting day and they are there before you get into work. That's an amazing secret that we have. I don't know I don't know, like, give me an example of like of something you like was a secret for you, and then maybe
that'll help trigger from there.
Yes.
So for me, it was figuring out how to get in the first place, like just making the leap into how to find work and how to like I started out just showing up to shops with a resume in hand and a hopeful look in my face.
Right.
And, that worked for me. But yeah, like I've gotten all of one job from an email, which is hardly surprising, I think. But, it's I accidentally got into the union, sort of. So
well, that's kind of a fun way.
Yeah. Like I didn't know what I was doing at all. Not in the least. Like I got a job at Western Costume and I was super excited about it. And they're like, well, you're like 2 days away from getting your days. So here's your stuff. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I want health insurance. This is great. Okay. And
right. And so did they bring you in as extra help for like a big job or something?
Yeah, for hostiles.
Were you working with Jack?
I was. Oh man.
Amazing.
You gotta love working with Jack.
Yeah, he's an incredible human being.
Yeah. Oh man, that was such a funny story. Because so I sent that was the one job that I got by email, right? Because I had shown up and with my resume in hand, and I showed up at the front door and I literally watched them put my resume in the garbage. And I was like, oh, you couldn't even like put it in the recycling? Like it was right now. Anyway. And because they had already hired for their overhire for Halloween, right? And they didn't know that I was like coming in to be like, can I sew for you? Can I do this?
Right.
And I emailed Allison Agler, who was the manager at the time. Right. And I had pad stitching on my as part of my resume. And she was like, okay, so I see you have pad stitching on here. So you're comfortable with tailoring. Okay, so I want you to come in and do a sewing test and pack a lunch just in case, but don't feel bad if you don't stay. The last guy lasted an hour. So
no pressure.
Jack is just kind of grumpy. Don't take it personally. If he yells at you, you're not alone, right? And and so I show up and he hands me a peak lapel to pad stitch, right? And just turns out that I learned how to pad stitch a lapel the same way that he does it, right? Where the peak of it, you switch directions, so you turn it into the body instead of just continuing up around the body. And he took it from me and he takes it into Allison. And I'm like, am I supposed to follow him? So I kind of follow, scurry behind him. And he takes it and he sticks it under Allison's nose, and he goes, this is good, and then leaves. And I'm just standing there going,
does that mean I get to eat my packed lunch?
Does that mean I get to bye? And then I worked there for a month, and it was great. I mean, I mostly sewed on buttons, thousands and thousands of buttons, so it was very glamorous, let me tell you.
With a shank?
Yes, yep. And I got all of the eagles to stand upright, so they all face the same way. So if you're watching Hostiles ever, which I've tried multiple times and I can't get through it, but yeah.
You don't always love the projects you work on.
Oh yeah, I had fun. I had fun making it, so that's the part that matters to me. But yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I knew how to sew, but like
right. I mean, so like me starting out, when I started, it was just such a different business. When I started, there weren't production assistants in costume departments. that was not an avenue to get into costumes. So it was independent movies. Like that's where you cut your teeth. And on independent movies, you could do anything because it wasn't governed by the union. So you could work set, you could be an ACD, you could do whatever needed to happen. You could wear 7 hats in one day, depending on what needed to happen, in your like 1 to 3 person crew. And so for me, it was really beneficial for me to work in a costume house because I met so many people during that time. And I mean, the business it's all about, like, I hate to drop the cliche, but it's about who and it's about building your network. And when, every job is an audition, you like, if people recognize that you're a hard worker, that you have a good eye, whatever it is that you're asked to do that day, that you accomplish it, then they're going to recommend you to other people. Or like on Mysterious Benedict Society, I was hired for 2 weeks and I'm, at the beginning of November and I'm still there. So it's like, once you make yourself indispensable, then that's what you do. So I guess like, the as far as like getting in now, it's just such a different beast. Whether or not it is great to become a production assistant, because when you're a production assistant, you are a cog in the machine and you see how the whole machine works. And especially if it's, like a large department, then you have the benefit of understanding how everything works together and how, what the journey of a costume is, because the journey of a costume is a long journey, from the concept meeting to shopping to the fitting, alterations, or if it's buying fabric and notions and building it and the fitting, and you know what I mean? There's just that costume journey is so long. And I mean, like I've had producers, like a designer show producer a picture of an actor and they'll go, I don't like brown. Okay, well, but what does that have to do with telling the story? Like, how does that, why like brown is a color that helps sell something, but you know what I mean? It's,
oh yeah,
the irony is this business is a very visual medium with people who do not necessarily have a visual way of communicating.
That's true. So while we're on the topic of producers sometimes just not liking brown, how do you deal with big personalities? What are some strategies that you have?
Big personality. Well, I have to say I love big personalities. Like I would go so far as to say that you have a big personality, Beth. I would. And big personalities don't, I embrace them. I think when somebody has a big personality, it usually means one of two things. It means they're either incredibly insecure or they're incredibly secure. And they're either trying to like make you believe that they're not insecure, or they're so secure in their body and who they are that they are just naturally big. And so with big person, I mean, really my strategy in any fitting is to like never talk, is because it's just, or if you need to talk, encourage them to talk about themselves, because people love to be listened to, and I'm a good listener. And so whether it's the designer, the actor, and the thing is too, is that the more that a big personality talks without you interrupting or trying to inject or, push your agenda, the more you learn. Like if you listen, you will really hear where it is that they want to go, where they're on this journey, and they'll tell you where they want to go if you listen. And so, I mean, there are like so many people that people say are difficult. Like a lot of people say that actresses are bitches, but I feel like it's this huge double standard that like if an actor did the same thing, then they're revered for being strong and decisive. It is, but that's a bigger patriarchy like thing. But like a lot of people said that Sarah Michelle Gellar was difficult, and I disagree 250%. she has a photographic memory. So is it difficult to have a conversation about the schedule with her without having the schedule in your hand? Yeah, it is, because she has it all in here. And when she wants to have a conversation about it, you better be on your game, because she is a pro. You know, she would show up on set and they'd be like, there'd be a fight sequence, and the stunt coordinator would be like, okay, so you're gonna like do a punch here and then a roundhouse and then like this. And she'd be like, okay, not rehearse it. They would start rolling and she would do it. And like, to me, that is a talent that I absolutely know that I don't have. And so everybody has a different idea of what difficult is, or big, or, you know, and I think that sometimes like actors get to a place in their career where they have that gravitas where they can call the shots, you know, where they, and then they do. And then there's some that still, you know, like their way of collaborating is really including the design process. But sometimes, but the thing is also is that actors, after they've done this for so long, they really understand what is successful for them, for their body, for them to convey a look, or for their character. So to not include this incredible like trunk of knowledge that they're bringing with them about what has worked and what hasn't, then I think you're doing a disservice to yourself and to the actor.
The purpose was for fishing for stories, right? And boy, you're good at delivering. I love this. It also kind of ties into my next question. So what's your best fitting room advice? I know you touched on it a little bit.
Right. So here's the thing. When you're in the fitting room, what you want to do is facilitate. So when the actor takes a piece of clothing off, have your hand out to take that piece of clothing, to hang it up, and to keep it organized. Because in some fittings can move, and you've been in so many fittings yourself, some fittings can move at such a rapid clip because the actor only has an hour. I mean, there could be a myriad of reasons. Maybe the actor is just really fast, or, you know, like you're trying to get through so many things. So it's about keeping organized, taking notes, and really the only time I will talk in a fitting is if I feel the energy starting to fall. And what happens is that sometimes in a fitting, actors will hit a wall, and sometimes designers will hit a wall too, because it is a really emotionally charged, you know, you have somebody who is in a really vulnerable position, who's like in various states of undress, and who is really trying to wrap their brain around who their character is. And there's so much happening in a fitting that I believe that you really need to give the designer and the actor the space to collaborate. And that's because that, at the end of the day, that is the most important thing, is that the actor feels like they're getting to the character that they're creating, and that the designer is helping that actor get there. So if you just stay out of their way and let them work these things out, because I've seen people who will try and interject to try and direct the conversation, or to steer it in one direction to like help them get there faster. It never works.
Like, the hanging up part is
I agree. But I'm not downplaying what I do, but what I'm just drawing the line in that I am not necessarily an active participant in the fitting in the collaboration. I'm doing everything around that collaboration to keep the conversation flowing, and, you know, and to anticipate things, because sometimes you'll like start to hear they want a different pair of shoes, so you'll like run out and grab a different pair of shoes, or, you know what I mean, just to kind of like listen and facilitate.
What are some of your favorite details with costumes? So like accessories or combinations of things, or
I would say my favorite accessory. Now here's the thing, and you have to remind designers this. It's like everything from here up is what the audience is going to see the most. So a pair of earrings is incredibly important. And sometimes if you get dangly earrings, like all you see during the whole scene is the earrings like dangling like this, which is incredibly distracting. So it is really important to have jewelry that is the character, and sometimes that character is a dangling earring. You can't get around it. That's who they are. But it is, is it classic? Is it pearls? Is it edgy? Is it like something crazy? It can be so many things. But this is the prime viewing area. So it's like, any details on the collar, like any details at the top of the garment, whatever the print is, necklace, what is that? Like someone with a cross necklace says a lot about their character. That's definitely a choice. But my favorite, listen, everybody loves shoes. Shoes are so much fun. And, like Dynasty, there were so many amazing shoes in that show. And then there are challenges like Dwayne Johnson, who wears a size 15 wide. There are inherent challenges. But I think my favorite accessory, my favorite detail are belts. I love belts. Belts make waists look small. Belts make outfits look polished, finished. They can be a statement belt. They can be a tiny belt. Belts can do so many things to help tell who a character is. Like I think of Glee, the character who played the guidance counselor, whose name is dropping out of my head. I want to say Emma, but like she wore little tiny belts. That was her thing. They wore little tiny belts, and she was a little tiny person, and she was very cute and buttoned up and very conservative, but with great like colors. And then there's like the character who wears like a laser cut leather Alaya belt that's like $1,500, $2,000, which becomes the focus of the outfit. Like everything else kind of emanates from that belt. So, I love accessories because they really help to polish and finish a costume. And it's just like another little way to say who the character is. Sometimes jewelry is an afterthought, and sometimes jewelry isn't really meant to help tell the story. It can be like studs or something like that. It could be something simple, but sometimes it can be like really interesting. There's a lot of interesting jewelry in the Mysterious Benedict Society.
So how have you navigated through your career? What motivated you to go from one thing to another?
Well, I think it's that thing where you hit your head against the wall, and then you hit your head against the wall, and then you hit your head against the wall, and you're like, you know what? I really need to stop hitting my head against the wall. And I think that is necessary for everybody on their journey. There are, I'm sure there are tailors who decided, you know what? I cannot based another set of Hymo again in my career, and I'm going to be a milliner. You know what I mean? There's just, everybody, you have to love what you do. And that's really what's guided my career, is being able to come into work. No worries. I know. I can't believe that my dogs have been so quiet through this entire thing, but maybe I should knock on wood, because now they're going to. Now the postman's going to come.
Naturally.
Right?
And with fanfare. Naturally.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I don't know where they are, but that's a good thing. It's, the thing is that you just really have to look inside every day and say, do you love what you do? And if you're honest with yourself, I think that will guide you in the direction that you need to go. I thought that supervising was going to be the next best thing to designing, and it wasn't. It's the business part of costumes. It's running the crew, it's keeping the budget, everything, orchestrating everything so that it's done on time. It's a really challenging job, and the people who are great at it are amazing, because they are just able to keep so many plates spinning in the air and get things done and not, become emotional about it.
Let's see. What is something about your job that gets you super excited?
Okay, this is a lot of customers say this, but every day is different. And there is nothing more exciting than walking in every morning and somebody handing you a completely new set of challenges to accomplish. And it's like different characters, day players, this isn't going to arrive on time because of COVID, and we need to find something in the stores, and just every day there's something. And even the most insanely easy things. I need a white tank top for this, for this female character, and you go out and you can't find a white tank top to save your life. It is just, sometimes the most mundane things are the biggest challenges. So, but I love coming in, and I love the people. This is, when you find the designers and the ACD, the costumers who support you and who push you to do your best work. I mean, I've worked with some of the most talented people in the business. I feel very, very fortunate, and and I've worked with some of the worst.
You are very good at predicting my next questions, by the way. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But my nenext question is, what is the most challenging part of your job?
So there are a few things. So like we just discussed, of course, the physical, like long hours. It's towards the end of the week, you are running on fumes sometimes. I would say the biggest challenge for really the business, it's not just costumes, it is the deadlines. The deadlines can really sometimes be unrealistic. Not that we don't always, wave our costume wands to make the magic happen and for it to come in on time, but the deadlines can be intense, and things that are beyond your control, like late casting, which, you'll hear a chorus of customers talk about late casting, what a challenge it is to do our job properly when, you have to do a fitting the morning that they're working at 6 a.m, and it is not ideal. But I would say that's the biggest challenge. And sometimes the physicality, like being a costumer is a really physical job, between walking and schlepping and carrying clothes and your brain, like I can never, well, I try not to, like, let's say I go shopping for 2 characters. I will do one character first, put that down, and then I'll do the second character, because it is just too difficult for my brain to do 2 characters at once. Like I need to really stay focused on who that character is, because I feel like sometimes if I do them both at the same time, they kind of end up both looking the same, which is not good. But I would say the deadlines and sometimes the budget. Sometimes you wish that you could do this, but with the money you can do this, and you just have to make this the best that you can make it.
So how did you originally get into the union?
So I was working I did a movie of the week that was non-union in San Diego, and it was called 1,000 Men and a Baby. And it was based on a true story, and it was about a man during the Korean War who adopted a Korean baby that had been left on the doorstep of someplace, and ended up taking this child on the wasn't a battleship, it was an aircraft carrier, and which he wasn't allowed to do. So they were trying to hide the baby, and anyway, and the story unfolds, and with an incredibly warm, and it was with the guy from the Waltons, John Boy, the guy with the mole, and Gerald McCraney was the like mean general. And after doing that project, the same designer was doing a movie that was going to Mexico, And I was helping her prep that at Motion Picture Costume Company. And the owners recognized that I was really working hard and they needed extra help. And so after that went to Mexico, they said, do you want to work here? And so that's how I got in. I was very, it took me like 3 years to get in. It took me 3 years to just, and it's like the lottery. Like once your number's called, then you're in. But it is, like we've already touched on in this interview, it's really your currency is your network. And so when you are, like I said, every job is an audition. When you show a costume crew that you're good at what you do, then they will recommend you to other people.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your role in leading in the union and participating in the union and what that's done for you and what you've done for others?
Yeah, the thing is that like anything else, it is it's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. It's like, what is the man behind the curtain doing? Because you don't really know until you get behind the curtain. And so there were things that I felt like there was room for improvement in our local. And kind of on a whim, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And I at the time, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had absolutely no idea, which is the danger. And like after I became the president, I saw that in so many conversations that I had with people, is that, until you really understand how the machine works, you can't really criticize it. But you can get in and be part of the machine and affect change from that position. It's definitely possible. And like the first thing right out of the gate was Robert's rules. So like as the president, my responsibilities were really to run meetings and to run the committees.
Let's change gears a little bit. What role have mentors played in your career?
Oh, I just got chills because I have to say that mentors are, one, they're hard to find. It is it's a very intimate relationship, and it definitely, like finding a partner in life, it's a unicorn that does not always present itself. But I was very fortunate early on in my shopping career to have worked with Robert Blackman, who most people maybe don't know by name, but he is the one who did in the 90s all the Star Treks. And he also he won an Emmy for that, and he won an Emmy for Pushing Daisies, which is a show that I could have watched for 10 more seasons. But it was just so ahead of its time. It just on network television. If it were on Netflix, it would have, they wouldn't have been doing 22 episodes a season, but it would have like run for 10 seasons. He's from the theater. He's Yale trained. He is a Leo, and he is a Leo Virgo. He's Leo Virgo Cuspy, and I'm Cancer Leo Cuspy. And so not only is he, he's had such a prolific career, and he just has so much design genius in his brain, but he's also a really kind human being. And I think that to watch him work and for it to be this incredible balance of, this, really pressure-packed position where you're trying to accomplish so much and keeping your humanity and talking to people and making them know that you're grateful for their work and to just do it with such grace and dignity. That was, working with him was really, really, I think instrumental. Like when I was working with him is when I ran for president. I think that he's given me some of the best advice of my career. He's given me brutally honest assessments of my performance, because sometimes I'm a water sign, so I can get really wrapped up, and sometimes I get a little too emotional. We all have things that we're working on. And I think that, like having heard about that from him, but he said it in such a loving and caring way. It wasn't about you're a bad person. It was like, here's something that I recognize that you can work on, and this is like, if we did this again, this is kind of like the direction that I think would be a more successful route for you to take. And and he gave me great advice when I was president. Like I would like talk to him about things that were affecting the union. And so I would say that finding a mentor is such a gift. Finding the person that you connect with on a level where you admire and respect them so much that you want to emulate them and to learn from their experience. A lot of people, this business can be very youth-centric. And but like there's so many designers who are, Patricia Fields and Anne Roth and Robert Blackman, who just have this encyclopedic knowledge of design. And it was like working with Debbie Reynolds. It's like, when you work with somebody who just has such a prolific career and they have experienced everything that you can experience, it's a gift. And and there again, it goes back to listening. If you want to learn, you have to listen. You have to let the conversation come to you.
What advice would you like to give students who would want to follow in your footsteps?
So gird your loins, get ready, because it's not going to be easy. This is a tough business to crack. It is not what you just waltz in and you get a job. This is it's you have to have enough experience to understand how the machine works, and we talked about that with production assistants. You have to get in there, and whether it's being a PA or working in a costume house or going to college and getting a good foundation of costume knowledge, of like period costumes and how to build. And like I have to say, like going into it, like if I had a fitting with you, Beth, it would be it's great because I have a background in building, so that we can have a conversation that's more on an equal footing, as opposed to somebody who has no experience building a costume, who has no experience draping, pattern making, any of that. So it is, so my advice to people is amass as much knowledge as you can, go to a school that's respected, that people recognize as a leader in, there aren't many schools that do costume technology. Most schools are design programs. Unless you really want to be a designer, then go to school where you can learn technical costuming. That is, you will always have a job. You'll always have a job. There is no, and technical costuming, whether it's building or creating costumes, or if it's shopping or being a key, these are all valuable things that you will carry with you in your career. Like learning to dye things. I even, like in school, we made wigs. Like we did it all. And it's just good to understand as much as you can, so that you understand like where you are in the department and what it is that you need to do to get the job done. And so be prepared for it to be tough. It's going to be tough. Be prepared to work a lot of hours. You're going to have to work a lot of hours. But hopefully by the time you get to be my age, you've gotten to a place where you're like not going to have to work as many hours to get the job done, that you can use the amount of knowledge that you have to get the work done in a shorter amount of time. And always, here's the thing, because we work so many hours, it is so important for you to come to the job every day with a great attitude, because people do not want to work with somebody with a bad attitude.
Speaking of you guessing my questions early, what kind of education would you recommend for people to have?
I mean, here's the thing. There are so many different degrees that would inform costuming. Sociology, psychology, costuming, technical costume. I mean, there's so many things, like anthropology. It's just, the anthropologic part of costumes is so intrinsically tied up with character, of like who they are, where they're from, what's their community, where do they live, what socioeconomic status do they have. All of these things that go into creating a character and understanding what the clothes do to help tell that part of the story, like who their character is. I mean, there are just so many things. Me personally, I am personally grateful because this is my experience, is I studied fashion. So I learned about the fashion industry. I learned how to sew on an industrial machine, which, like, the first time you sit down in an industrial machine and you put your foot on that pedal, it's like, wow, like you just don't anticipate how fast that machine is going to go. And so just to like get through those hurdles, to understand what a marrow machine is, to understand like what all the pieces are, to like be able to have a conversation with a tailor or pattern maker and fitter about what needs to be accomplished. All these are beneficial things, to understand how things are dyed, to do crafts, any kind of technical theater program. I was very fortunate when I went to California Institute of the Arts. The program was very balanced. It was like, there was like the design half and there was the like technical costume half. And we all had to work on productions in different capacities. So on one show we'd be a stitcher, one show we'd be the first hand, one show we'd be the assistant costume designer. It's like you had to cycle through so that you really understood what the whole department did to make the product become reality. So it is, and the thing is that sometimes you go to school and you learn one thing, and then you get into the real world and you learn another thing, and you learn on the job. And there's no harm, no foul in that either. And I've known a lot of costumers who have been finished costumers. So there are two kinds of costumers in the industry. There's custom made costumers like Beth, and then they're finished costumers like myself. And so, and it's like, where that comes from is the custom made costumers would build a costume, and once it was finished, then they would hand it off to the finished costumer because they had the finished costume. And so it is important for you to, or anyway, where I was going with that is that like a lot of costumers, finished costumers, at the end of their career will decide they want to be stitchers or custom made because they like want to try something different, where it's maybe not as physically demanding, you know what I mean, but uses their brain and the skills that they have. So the more skills that you have, the more opportunities will present themselves.
What kind of skills specifically would you love to see in new workers?
What skills? I mean, here's the thing. What skills? I would just love to see people who really commit themselves to learning. And so whatever that is, that's great. And here's the thing. New people come in, new perspectives, maybe they have like a new way to do something. I mean, like with computers, like even on this show, I'm learning a lot about, we're using a Google Drive, and we're doing like whole spreadsheets for shopping for different characters, and to learn that you hit Command K to make it a hyperlink, and just things like that. Bring your new knowledge to the table, and then listen to and then like take in all the things that don't hit your head against the wall. Learn from the people who have already hit their heads against the wall. Like try and it's really a balance of both. Everybody has something to bring to the table. And this was like something that I really believed when I was the president of 705, that like, we weren't kind of engaging the younger members, that like in my experience with the union, younger members were kind of like pushed out of the conversation. And I thought it was really important. Everybody, everybody is a player, everybody is a participant, everybody has skin in the game. It is important for us to all learn from each other. Everybody, like I said, so if someone's an anthropologist, they're going to bring something completely different to the table that is not your skill set or my skill set. So I'm going to want to listen to them for what their experience is. So this, for like maybe a part of society that I'm not familiar with, that they'll be able to educate and inform me about. So I'd like listening skills and not being afraid to bring what you have to the table, but also having great attitude and willing to work hard. Like those, like I think that, and willing to learn.
A little bit back onto your careers more too. So how do you choose which projects or employers to work for?
Well, so there are a lot of components to that. So the first thing is, there is the people that are your people that you have worked with before, that you have a great working relationship with, that when you come into a show, you will understand where you fit in the department, what it is that you do. That's one. Then the second one is expanding your network, working on a show with people that you haven't worked with before. Now, I mean, like on the show I'm on right now, I've never worked with the designer, I've never worked with the supervisor, but the supervisor is the chairperson of the PACT initiative. So I have worked with her in a different capacity. And then Bethany Jane is the key, who was like my, the person that I worked with the most closely at 705 when I was president. She was the assistant business rep. And like, I mean, I've met so many great people on the show. So it's always great to expand and to learn new things. This designer has a different process than anybody I've worked with, and it's great. I love it. I love watching it. And then the third thing is financial. And this is a real thing. There are over 22 different contracts. And some contracts are really crappy. They have a really crappy rate. And so it is deciding. So if you're at the beginning of your career and you need to amass credits, working for that crappy rate, you'll get to do something that you'll work with people, you'll expand your network, and you'll be able to get more work in the future from it. So there are benefits, but sometimes you need to make a choice based on the rate. And the thing is that it is really important for costumers, because we're one of the lowest paid departments, because I believe in my heart that what happens is that nobody sees the journey of a costume, and they don't understand how skilled the work is that we do. And so we are underpaid. And so I think that it's important to negotiate up, so like I, was interviewed for a show at the beginning of the year, and they said, you get the costumer rate. Now, granted, it was a feature, so it wasn't a bad rate, but I was like, but the rate I get is the key rate. So I negotiated upwards. And the producer said, oh, we don't really have a lot of money, and da, 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 da. And I said, okay, great. Well, I wish you all the best on your show, and take care. And he goes, wait, is that a deal breaker? And I'm like, yeah, it is, because that's the rate I've gotten on the last 3 movies I've done. And I don't work to subsidize films. I work to pay my mortgage.
So what do you think is the most important thing to create a successful collaborative environment?
Listening. You have to listen. This is, everybody will have the opportunity to share their opinion, but you're not collaborating if you're not listening to everybody else's. So if it's not a two-way street, the communication, it's not a collaboration. Collaboration is everyone contributing to the whole. Listening is, I really believe, the most important thing that you have to do, and you have to be open. You can't, be a wall and then expect people to want to work with you. It's so you have to, and and sometimes I'm very passionate and very about my beliefs, and I will share them. And sometimes the designer will be like, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. Or sometimes they'll be like, I understand what you're saying, but this is how I want it. And that's their job, to make decisions. It is their name on the project. So it is, like, it just depends on what it is. And sometimes, and being the designer, you have to make difficult decisions like that.
On the other end of things, what are some red flags that you look for in a working environment?
Oh, I mean, here's the thing. I don't look for them. And that is, I think, really, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you are looking for red flags. But I will say this. Sometimes you'll be on a show where you will know that the amount of prep and the amount of the budget are not enough to get the job done without really overextending yourself. And so to me, that is, sometimes people take jobs like that and they just go, well, you said this is the budget, but we told you it was going to cost this much. And that's kind of their tact. They just say, this is what it's going to be. You can say that this, I mean, the thing is, these budgets are created in an office in Burbank, and they have no idea what it takes for a costume to be created. So, you have to take these budgets with a grain of salt, because they really haven't asked a costume designer or a costume supervisor what it's going to cost to do a show. So it is, if you talk to a supervisor and it's a show that has not enough prep, not enough money, I mean, I would say those are red flags. And then there's sometimes where you're like, you know what? There are red flags, and fuck it. I'm gonna do it, because it's just like, I want to work with this actor, I want to work with this director, or it's like there's just so many components to a job. You have to decide what is important, negative, good, bad for yourself, and then make the decision there. Like, oh, you know what, this is going to be a crappy job, but I really want to work with this designer. I think this designer is really talented, and I really want to see what their process is. Or, I really want to get in with this supervisor because they do really big movies, but they're doing this one as a favor to the producer, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? There's so many different reasons to do a show. And I mean, honestly, no show is ever perfect. So, like Mysterious Benedict said, we really don't have enough prep. We're just really, it's going to be by the skin of our teeth getting this on screen. Thankfully, we pushed a week.
What are some of the hallmarks of a really well-run show?
So, you can ask this question to, it's like, it goes back to how many costumers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Everybody's going to have a completely different answer to this question, because I think everybody has a different working style. For me, what makes a great department, and I'm kind of speaking specifically about Carol Coons, who is a supervisor that I've worked with many times over the years, and I just think is really one of the best at what she does. And I think that a really great department is when you hire really talented people and you don't have to micromanage them. That you just let them do their jobs, you give them the objectives, they get they get whatever needs to be done on time, and that's the best thing. And every once in a while, general reminder. So the fittings tomorrow, do we have those boots? Just that, where it's like enough time to, if you totally forgot it, to procure those boots, or to say, yeah, it's in the fitting room, and I set it up, it's ready to go.
How you like to negotiate. Do you have any other advice for negotiating when you're considering an offer?
Well, here's the thing. You really need to decide before you go into the negotiation what you are willing to give up. So if you're willing not to do the job, then know that, because that is what is, and if something is definitely a deal breaker, then you have to be able to say no. Now, my advice to you is, in a negotiation, don't get emotional, because it's business. This is not, it's not like, but I'm so good at what I do and I can't, it's like, that is not coming from a place of power negotiations. It is being really clear about what it is that you need to do the job. And they'll either say, yes, we can make that happen, or they will say no. And you have to, just like how I was telling that story, you have to be willing to walk away and say, I wish you all the best. And the thing is, you just always want to be classy. You always want to be positive and not, just because this isn't the job for me doesn't mean it isn't the job for somebody else. And I wish you all the best. This, I read the script, it's a great project, or you know what I mean? And just be classy. Like, don't burn a bridge in a negotiation, because you never know, the next movie you might get a call again. And then that time the producer, he or she, will be like, this time I can give you what I know you need.
So last question, we made it. So do you have anything you would like to plug, or anything else you would like for the general public to know, or students to know about you or the industry, or?
Well, I really believe, in my heart of hearts, and the reason that I'm doing this is because you said you wanted to shine a light on what we do. And I think that is, as the president, that was my goal. That's why I fought really hard to go to Comic-Con. That is, to do campaigns where people understand what it is that we do, because the disconnect is that we all wear clothing. And because we all wear clothing, everybody believes that they could be a costumer, which couldn't be further from the truth. And it is, I think, our job as costumers to elevate ourselves and to get the money and the respect that we deserve, is to really educate the public about the skilled work that we do. I was in a meeting, an local meeting, and I was talking about how come people who build super suits, like the amount of technical knowledge and expertise that takes, why aren't they getting paid the same amount as a sound engineer? Why is that? That is something so specific, and it takes so much knowledge to accomplish. Why is it so disparate in the pay scales? And I mean, that's a whole nother podcast about why that is, and the history of costumers, and who we are as people, that we're people pleasers. And I mean, there's like a whole litany of things to discuss, but my point in saying this is, I just think it's important for costumers to educate the public about what it is that they do, because if I had a nickel for every time a producer told me how great a shopper their girlfriend is, I wouldn't be costuming. I would be a rich man. So, we have to change this perception that what we do is, just shopping and going to lunch in Beverly Hills. That is not what we do. It is to make things happen on the schedules that we have. It takes a lot of knowledge and expertise to make that happen. So that's your job, should you choose to accept it, is to educate the world about the very very challenging work that we do.
Absolutely. I would look forward to it. All right, I will let you go. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Have an awesome, I hope you get some rest tomorrow.